Okay, everybody, this is the first official episode of LifeGrove Radio, and I'm here with some amazing people. We've got Joshua, the CEO of LifeGrove. We've got Christopher, and we have the ever so lovely Diana. How is everybody today?
Good. How are you doing?
Amazing.
Good, good. Guys, I'm excited to be here. This is pretty cool.
I'm excited.
Like
Now we get to understand why we're all here.
That's right.
Christopher showed up. It is time to get into the deep shit.
That's right.
That's right. We brought the whole gang together today.
Well, I'm excited. I'm ready to talk about whatever.
Okay.
Do we all have to say we're excited?
Yes.
We actually left you out on purpose.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, I don't want to speak out of turn here. What if I'm not excited, guys?
We'll take that into consideration.
Oh, good.
So everybody on LifeGrove has known that this podcast was coming. Joshua, let's start with you. What prompted you to want to start a podcast and kind of bring all this together?
Well, I think podcasts have the unique ability to kind of shine the limelight on those people that don't get heard very often. And that's one of the things that we're really big is about forming community and being able to get new ideas, new concepts out there. And that's what really drives LifeGrove all together. We want to be an eclectic company that really helps people look at every avenue, every path possible towards spirituality and that integration of mind, body, spirit, which we're all about. And the podcast allows us to really just have this platform to invite people that's already accepted in the mainstream. People know they can come on podcasts, they can be interviewed, they can share their beliefs and get their voice heard. And we want to have that platform available on LifeGrove too.
Yeah, I've seen this this kind of growth since I've been working with you guys, and the community you guys have is strong, and the people that are coming and paying attention to your posts, the people that are interacting with your stuff, they're really into it. And the one thing that I noticed when I was kind of going through my own spiritual awakening is that I really felt left out. I had no clue who to talk to. I had a lot of stuff going on in my head, and I had nowhere to go. Now, I've obviously found you guys after all of that happened, but I'm so thankful that this organization exists for people that are trying to go through this and navigate it right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's important to know. And Christopher, Diana, and I have kind of had this conversation too, that we don't have all the answers and we recognize that we don't. And while we like to sometimes yell out in the vacuum and hope that somebody yells back at us, it's really nice to have on practitioners and yourself, Cameron, and other people coming on and sharing their wisdom with that community in hopes that there's somebody there that they can really connect with and help them along in their spiritual journey.
Definitely. Yeah, it almost kind of makes me think of like ancient mystery schools, like it's almost coming back, and this is kind of our way, a modern way of doing it without, necessarily being creepy and hiding in dungeons, which we sometimes do, but we don't tell people about.
Oh, we didn't tell you that's the next phase of LifeGrove is being creepy and hiding in dungeons.
Excellent. I kind of want, so I haven't actually heard everyone's story, and I thought that that'd be a good place to start with your guys's, maybe a quick, brief story about what got you into spirituality, or did you always know? Did it something happen to you in your life? I kind of wanted to hear from you guys to kind of get that message across, because even though they are individualistic, I do feel like most of the stories that come to this path are the same in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Diana, let's start with you. What got you on this path?
Well, I first, I guess, recognized that things weren't as they seemed by the time I was, I think by 12, it was made official in my life. Because before that, I had all sorts of experiences and kind of a level of understanding of things that I shouldn't have had in, like second grade, first grade, that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but I thought everybody was like that. It didn't really hit me that things were really, I guess, considered strange or spiritual until around 12 years old. I was raised in a very strict, very tight-knit evangelical community. Very, very condensed, not a whole lot of, getting out there. But because of that, I think is really what kind of drove it all home to me. Spending time researching other cultures, other religions to make sense of what I was experiencing. And I guess in a nutshell, that's really how it all started with me, just being raised with a very forceful set of beliefs, a very forceful set of expectations when it came to spirituality. So it was a very, I mean, religion was my life for most of my life. It was like my, food and water. But it didn't always make the most sense to me with my own experiences that people would, I guess, claim you're called supernatural or unnatural experiences.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, we see this all the time, with religion, sometimes well, first of all, with spirituality, the path in learning and understanding is something that has to be done by one's own will. And that's the problem I see with religions versus spirituality, is that it is forced and there's no room for growth or really room for understanding. When I was young, I went to church only because I wanted to ask questions because I really didn't understand. And I was met with some, the most basic, easy answers, which is like, I don't know, or, you just got to trust and believe in it. And I just didn't get it. Like there was people who couldn't even tell me who wrote the Bible. I'm like, well, how are you supposed to know anything if you don't even know who wrote this book that you're putting so much faith in? And what opened the doors for me was Buddhism. Because Buddhism wasn't telling me that I had to go somewhere or I had to do this. It wasn't really telling me how to do anything. It was just saying, like, if you're tired of being miserable all the time, this is a more peaceful path. And when I pursued that, that was how I started to understand the other religions and the other cultures. It made more sense once I did it through this one way. And I think that's kind of how it is for most people.
Yeah, it was Celtic paganism that really spoke to me. And ancient Egypt was where research really began. But when I came across New Age ideas and Celtic paganism, that was really what just kind of felt familiar almost to me. I had sort of a obsession or a love for nature that most kids didn't really have, and a respect for nature and for the life force that I recognized in trees by the time I was 10 years old. That was my doorway.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. Joshua, let's hear your story, man. I'm excited to hear this one. What got you? Was it always like this, or did something happen to get you here?
So I'm going to beat around the bush and answer your question with kind of a wide open statement. And that is, I think that most people's spiritual journeys, at least spiritual enlightenment, starts with trauma. And that trauma is a little bit different for everybody in terms of what it takes to kind of push us over that threshold. And I think that that's kind of predetermined in our life in terms of what trauma we're willing to accept and step into and what we need. And it's at the point that we recognize that trauma as a learning tool and kind of fall into spiritual enlightenment, or how long we're going to fight against that and essentially resist it and continue to go through ongoing trauma. So throughout my life, I've experienced a variety of different traumas, and I won't be specific to what those are, but I think that's probably going to be true for everyone that's kind of stepped into spiritual enlightenment. And so it's always been there. There's always been aspects and little hints of spiritual pieces throughout my entire life. I talk about astral projection a lot with LifeGrove. I talk about meditation. I talk about mindfulness. Nature is a big movement for me too. And I've kind of dabbled in everything. I've experienced, I was actually a stand-in pastor for a while and a youth pastor in a Baptist church, read the Bible multiple times. I've studied Druidism. I've studied Wiccan, I've studied Buddhism, I've studied Hinduism. I've kind of went through the whole gamut because I like having information. That's kind of my curse and my folly, that I love knowledge and I just want to acquire more and more and more knowledge. So I'm always looking at that next thing to kind of garner information from it and learn from it. But in terms of like what led me to spiritual enlightenment or what led me down the path to spiritual enlightenment, I think it's trauma, 100%. That is definitely the catalyst to growth.
Yeah. Wow. God, well put, well said. From my experience, I mean, you guys have heard my story before, but that's exactly how it was for me. I literally was at a point in my life where I was just like, why can I not stop being angry? Like, why am I suffering all of the time? Why is the life so miserable? And I'm like, what the fuck is the point of being here? It's so awful. And then like, I swear it was that question that like jogged my mind up enough to be like, guess what? Here you go. There's, it's kind of like makes me think of like Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory, like, Wonka just walking up and being all crazy. It was kind of like that. The doors opened and then it was this crazy person standing on the other side, like, guess what? I'm going to show you how far this goes. And boom, it was like this open floodgate of like understanding. I couldn't express where it was coming from, but it was just there. And like, it felt like I always knew it. And then things like simple things, like when I was a kid, you guys will love this. Did you guys ever like read or know what animorphs were back in the day?
Yeah. Yep.
The animorphs. Okay. So when I was a kid, and this happened multiple times, but this is just the one experience that I can relate to, is that when I was a kid, I got into Animorphs like way late in the game. And when I was a little kid, I was like, man, it'd be cool if there were Animorph toys. I'd never seen them, never, didn't even know they made them. And a week later, I go to the store with my dad, and he's getting fishing supplies. And what do I see? Animorph toys. And like when I was a kid, I questioned that experience. Like, somebody reading my mind right now? Like, how did this happen? And then later in life, after these experiences started happening and I started doing research on the law of attraction, I was like, oh shit, I wonder if I did that, or if somehow I manifested that, or it was just the right time in the right place. It was weird. And the more I look back on my life, the more moments like that, like you're talking about, I see the dots connecting. I'm like, it's been there all along.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say that I've had the benefit in my career because I've been a behavior specialist, I've been a therapist, I've been a trainer for hundreds, thousands of individuals I've stepped inside of a room with. I've worked with groups and communities and individuals. And I've seen those same patterns with people as well. And I think that in the years that I've spent working with people and seeing the patterns in their life and how they cycle through patterns of suffering over and over and over again without ever grasping the lesson in that and growing beyond that allowed me the opportunity to reflect on my own life and see how I had been doing that too. And so just through that learning process, by seeing it in others, it allowed me to take a step out of my own life and look at it more objectively and go, you know what, this is happening here too. Nothing's going to change unless I change.
That's good. Last but certainly not least, Christopher, would you like to give us a quick little jot about your story, man?
Well, I mean, it didn't really start for me until I discovered that I was the 493rd reincarnation of the great wizard Merlin. And now I tease.
Sorry,
I tease, but that is also true. For me, I've always been a seeker, much like Joshua. Knowledge is a game that I love to play. I love to play at and hoard as much of it as possible here in my great metaphysical library. But I've always been that way. I've always had a connection. And I think, listening to you guys talk about your story, it's intriguing to me. And I had this idea come up. And I don't know if there ever was an awakening as much as an acceptance of what I am, right? So we talk about this awakening like somebody put us to sleep. Well, the fact of the matter is usually it's ourselves that put ourselves to sleep, and we have to wake ourselves up. And so for me, it was like a game of, I accept this. Do I accept this? I don't accept this. I'm in denial. Now I'm feeling miserable. Now I'm feeling, this case of suffering. And it's up to me whether or not I want to let off the gas, putting myself in the misery bus, So, I mean, it's always been a part of my life. It's just been whether or not I've been willing to face the truth that I had the power all along. The power to banish this suffering, the power to end suffering for myself and for others. And so, yeah, I think in a way, talking about it is always interesting, right? Talking about the dark night of the soul, like we have many times, Cameron, is a fun exercise. However, there's something, I feel like I'm getting spoken to by my guides right now saying, yep, you're seeing something new. You're missing the point. There is no awakening. It's a level of denial that we go through. That we're just not willing to see the truth of who we are. And I think that can be a powerful way to relate this to others, because it wasn't like I got hit on the head and then blah, the sky opened up or anything like that. It was a case of me finally saying, I'm done living in a state of suffering.
I absolutely like that. I mean, it goes down to the idea that you can't really pinpoint the date of awakening, just like you can't point the day that you fell in love with your spouse, so to speak. It's this gradual thing. You can't pinpoint when you became an old man. It's a gradual, ongoing thing. And it's essentially at the point
That's
that
good.
It's when you're able to step beyond. I mean, I think the trauma has a lot to do with it, like I was talking about earlier. But what you're talking about, Christopher, is that at some point you wake up and you recognize purpose.
Right.
and what it is that's going on. And when that purpose reveals itself, it's like there's an awakening that happens. It's so gradual and progressive. You can't pinpoint it.
Right. And you know, there are major traumatic events that can create this feeling for people, this understanding, this opening to source or to self, to higher self. And it's absolutely true. I mean, it's been documented thousands and thousands of times. You know, the shamans call it shaman sickness. You know, there's so many different labels that we can assign to it, and trauma is definitely part of it. I have to have to admit that. My own trauma was self-induced. You know, so that was the case for me. Was and I'm floored that I'm just now getting this. Like, this idea.
Mhm.
Oh, it was just me all along. Okay.
Well, that's what Aristotle said, right? He said, great men who don't have difficulty thrown upon them, thrust it upon themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because my life was not challenging, really. I mean, I had picture perfect family, you know, total Americana, right? I didn't really want for anything. We weren't rich by any means, so we were quite destitute at some point in my life, but we were happy. We had love, and I loved going to school. I was good at that. Didn't have any challenges there really, and so yeah, I guess I had to do it all to myself in order to see the ability to overcome and to become the man that I am today.
That's good. All of them are wonderful stories. And you know, anybody listening to this, of course, if they're listening to this, I'm sure they can relate. And you know, I've talked to a lot of people. I've interviewed a lot of people for, you know, these other ventures I have going on, and they all have a similar story. And you know, I was talking to a person that we'll have on the show actually here coming up pretty soon, Dr. John Schinnerer, who's a psychiatrist. Um, he and I talked about like toxic masculinity, and you know, the taboo of being a man. And the reason why I love this and kind of like brings it to this conversation is because I loved how he was coming at it from such a scientific approach, and I was coming at it from such a woo-woo approach. And you know, I just felt so much love for this guy because what he's doing for men is so good and so wonderful. And what I want to do is the same thing, but I want to do it for all people, because all people, to some degree, if they're asleep, they're not really asleep, as you said, they're confused. And you know, how much better would the world be if people were not so confused and they could breathe a little, you know, if they knew what we knew, and if they could understand what we understand, they could breathe a little bit better and treat each other better, you know. Chris, as you were talking about, all of your suffering was self-induced. Well, guess what? So was mine, you know. And everyone that's asleep right now or confused is creating their own suffering. And that's what all of these practices go back to. You know, we talk about ancient Egypt, we talk about ancient Tibet. What is at the heart of what they're saying? Everything comes down to you and what's inside you. And it's not this fairy tale mythological thing. It's real. It's really in you. And there is a scientific way of seeing it and a metaphysical way of seeing it. And what these religions fail to bring forth, because it's not done the right way, is that it's not about the Son of God. It's about the sons and daughters of God, what is inside all of us and what we're capable of doing when we realize this.
Funny, that was actually kind of how, I mean, the idea of LifeGrove came around really. I was doing my own sort of thing on my own called Collective Truths that was about bringing science and the metaphysical together to help anybody from, you know, if they're of the woo-woo mind, that they would find something and learn something. And if they were of the scientific mind, they would find something and learn something. And slowly but surely, each side would open up to the other side, and that bridge would be created, and people wouldn't suffer so much. People wouldn't be so confused or so lost anymore. So it's funny that you put it that way.
Yeah, it's the truth, you know. I mean, that's what all of us wants, really. You know, the four of us, that's what we want, is for people to have a safe place to express what is, you know, wanting and yearning to come out of them. At least that's what it was for me, you know. I felt this burning desire. And just like you did, I kept thinking like something kept pulling me. My intuition kept pulling me to ancient Egypt and Thoth. And I was like, why? Why is this so interesting? Why do I keep looking into this? Like, what a weird thing. What a strange thing. Like the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Like, what is that? Why am I listening to this at midnight on YouTube? I don't get it. And then I just kept sitting there and I'm like, God, something they kept saying is just stuck in my head. And then I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'll trust my intuition. Like maybe I'll just like let some woo-woo happen or whatever. And then that led me to the very first book that I read on this like path, which was called Shambhala by Chogyan Trungpa. And it's the sacred path of the warrior. And I was like, oh, so fitting. I don't understand, you know, coming out of the military and not really ready to let that part of me die. I'm looking for this new identity. And here I am reading this book by, you know, some dude. I have no clue who it is. I literally just found it by random chance. And it was one of the best books I've ever read. And each word was like gold. Each page was literally changing my perception of the world. And it was just a book. And that's all I needed. And the only reason I had it was because I went looking for it.
If it makes you feel any better, my obsession with Egypt in the 7th grade, I taught myself to read ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs just as a hobby. So
yeah, no, that's good. I know I definitely am interested in it too. Cause I like, you know, you see things and you kind of start to question, like, well, how do they know? Like, I need to be able to read this myself to fully understand. Like, what are they not telling me? But guys, this is great. This is a good conversation. And what I'm hoping to do with this podcast is for this to be kind of a beacon, to be kind of a voice of all four of us for people that are out there trying to figure out this path and trying to understand what's going on inside of them. I mean, because let's face it, 2020, if there was ever a time for great awakening, I mean, this, I think this is it.
On a global scale.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think you say that, and I know you say it jokingly, but what we are seeing is the beginning of that. This is how it begins, with trauma.
That's right.
And a lot of questions that come on board after the trauma, and then some understanding and some healing and then some integration. And that's really the entire process that each one of us needs to go through in order to enact that. I always say that it's not about healing the world. Heal yourself and the world will take care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody did that, then we'd be in good shape.
Yeah.
I think some of the difficulty there, and I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this, but this has been my experience, is that a lot of that knowledge and healing yourself is hard to come by. And I think that's what we're trying to offer with LifeGrove, is because navigating those choppy waters can be really mind-numbing, difficult, stressful. I mean, any adjective you want to throw at it is going to describe what navigating that choppy waters is, because the experience is different for everybody. But it is difficult, and you don't know what you don't know, and you are always doing the best with what you have. And having somebody else step in and give some perspective can really widen your own perspective and allow you to see what is really going on with you. And that's been a lot of my experience in working with individuals, is that they just oftentimes don't know they don't know. They're doing the best with what they have. They haven't heard an alternative idea. They're kind of in their own realm of people that only believe what they believe, think what they think, feel what they feel. And they have a really hard time taking steps on a different path that's going to really lead them to a happier, more wholesome, healthier lifestyle.
Yeah. We're all, I say this all the time because it's so true, but the Buddha himself said, you are what your thoughts are. Like, you become what your mind is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. And this is the one thing that really woke me up, was realizing this, like, whatever I'm thinking is causing me either harm or help. And then all of a sudden, it's like, ba-ding, I'm like, oh, I also control my thoughts when I'm aware of it. And that spiraled into this thing. And it was just like, I became more productive. I had more energy. It's not perfect, but it's part of the balance, the metaphysical balance that we're experiencing on this place, is that, and that this is what Zen and Buddhism covers. And this is why I love it. And this is my doorway into it. But it talks about the balance, right? Like, it gives you a solid answer. Why are you suffering? Because you are suffering, because it's supposed to be suffering. It's not perfect because it's not meant to be perfect. This is part of an experience. And when I started doing that and thinking that, and just like being honest with myself about the possibility that it's real, then I was like, okay, well, this is what I understand now to be God, that this thing, right, source, the ancient one, God, whatever you wish to call it, it really is in, you know, and I don't like to think of it as like in charge, but it is omnipresent in everything. And, you know, like when I had this realization, I was just like, oh my God, like I literally had tears come out of my eyes because I was so moved. And this person that I used to be, this jerk, this mean, cold-hearted person, finally died. And I was like, I can be who I want to be now. And that was it. That was the change for me.
Yeah, there's that pre-programming that goes on in the subconscious that we carry with ourselves that we're very unaware of. And it's only through that self-reflection, that meditation, through studying, through going outside of your comfort zone and working with other people, that you become aware of that subconscious programming and you're able to redial it in and really become who you want to become. It's awesome to hear that you did that because it's a difficult path.
Yeah, you know, and I don't want to sound egotistical by any means, because like I don't really, it was an accident. Like, you know, if you guys had met me even 2 years ago, you would have been blown away because it just wasn't me. I was doing steroids. I was huge. I was massive. I was a bodybuilder, and I was, you know, a jerk. I was an asshole to everyone around me. And when I got out of the military, I had this, you know, identity crisis, which kind of provoked all of this. And the question came, you know, why am I suffering so much? Why am I doing this? And then, you know, probably a year ago, you know, these things kind of started unraveling, and then boom, pandemic hits, and then we go into quarantine. And then I had my dark night of the soul in the quarantine. I would say it was almost like I had two. It was kind of, it felt like this moment where I kind of like was starting to kind of poke my head in and be like, oh, wow, this is pleasant. This is wonderful. I'm really excited about this. It's great. And then all of a sudden, like right before quarantine happened, it's kind of like this almost maybe like empathic something happened where I started having real bad anxiety and I started having really bad heart palpitations out of nowhere for no reason at all. Went to the doctor. They're like, dude, you're fine. Calm down. Then quarantine happens and I'm stuck in my house for months with this feeling. And so I had to literally just go back to my roots and start meditating every day and journaling and writing everything down. And then that's when it was like I blossomed into a beautiful flower and I shed my skin. And I was truly free after that point, but it was fucking painful. It was definitely a rough couple months.
I think it's also important to note, Cameron, you know, we have this awakening often. It's not a one-time event in our lives. There might be the first one, right? But we continually peel back layer after layer of awareness and consciousness to evolve and to change who we are. I mean, if you think about what constitutes our individual personalities, our individual personas, it's the labels, right? And all the things that we think matter and all the things that we think make up our entire life. And slowly but surely, if you continue down this path, you peel away one, you know, you take away another one. There's still some of it left. And eventually you're left with none of them if you keep at it, right? And you see that you're much more than those personas. So there are many dark nights of the soul, many spiritual awakenings that are needed to be experienced in this path. And there's many healing things that need to happen, right? We've all experienced many traumas, no matter, and this is something, you know, just popped up in my head here. The idea of trauma, the comparison that we often do between my trauma versus your trauma. All traumas are valid and all traumas are equal. And that is a difficult pill for many people to swallow, because when we have something horrific happen to us, it's impossible for us to think that anybody else could go through something worse, because we're stuck in that feeling. And that's pure suffering right there, right? Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. The pain that we experience from the initial trauma is always going to be there, right? And we can heal that to some extent. But the real problem with trauma and the real problem with the suffering that we're hoping at LifeGrove to help people find a way out of is to not stick with that pain. You know, the Buddha calls it the second dart, right? I you know, the first dart hurt, but the second dart I threw at myself. You know, and so it's whether or not we want to live in that mode. Do we want to live with all these labels? Do we want to live with all this fallacy that we've created?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we want to choose to evolve and become something more?
Well said. And again, going back to the, scriptures or ancient texts, whichever one, and I've referred to this many times in, these podcasts, is that we've heard this saying, bringing heaven to earth. And my standpoint is that heaven and hell is not a physical place. It's a state of mind. And if we see it this way, and if we can accept it, have open minds, and we see it for what it is, then maybe this idea of bringing heaven to earth is not so difficult. It's much more reasonable when you think about it from people's state of mind, and what we can offer people and what we're doing and hoping to do for people. And that's a beautiful thing. We literally bringing heaven to earth, and that's what this is all about. And everything else is an illusion. We talk about the Matrix. What we're all referring to is the quote unquote the Matrix. And you have a choice every day, in every moment. You have a choice whether to accept the red pill or accept the blue pill. Unfortunately, like as you said, it's not a one-time deal. You don't just take the blue pill and you're good to go, or whichever one it was. You still got to keep doing it,
Mm-hmm.
And in the practices, this is where you guys come into play so very well, is the practices, the things that people need to do every day to awaken that part of them, to kind of almost kindle the flame to get them going, and I'd love to hear from all three of you, but like, let's just do one for each. But like, what's a practice you guys are currently doing in your spiritual journey?
I bring nature in, even if that means something as simple as opening the blinds every morning, letting the sun in. Some people wouldn't believe how many live in darkness inside their own house, just by keeping all the windows and all the blinds shut, because we're all sitting in front of screens all the time and nobody wants to glare, right? But that affects your psyche, it affects your spirit, it affects your emotions, it touches on everything. And anytime I'm talking to someone, any sort of client at any level, I always tell them, start every day with opening your blinds. If it's nice outside, open the windows. Just it makes you feel more alive, and you start recognizing, as soon as everything's open, you have light all around the house, just how long and how dark you've been letting yourself live. And it has a deep, deep effect.
God, that's true. Yeah. I guess that was probably one of the first things I noticed in my life changing was, when I had the epiphany about my thoughts and how that was impacting me. I was like, well, shit, that means everything. Like everything I'm doing is playing such a huge role. Like, no wonder I'm so fucking angry all the time. Like, all I do is listen to heavy metal and lift weights and inject myself with steroids. Like, no wonder I'm a raging lunatic all the time. But Joshua,
be
what
easy
about
on
you?
your past self.
I know he's being nurtured as we speak.
Say never blame yourself for the wisdom that you hold today that you didn't have yesterday. So this is probably one of the most difficult things for me, but something that my wife is good at pushing me to do and I need to do more of, but that is connecting with other people. There's so much that can happen in terms of personal growth by connecting with others, because you learn more about yourself by engaging with other people and recognizing things in them. And I know for myself, there's certain things in the past that I've really hated about myself. And so I don't like engaging with other people where I might see those same traits that I haven't healed within myself. But engaging with other people regularly, having that sense of community, using them as a mirror into your own soul for reflection, and spending a lot of time listening instead of talking in those interactions so you can go back and reflect on that, is extremely healthy and helpful.
God, that's good. That's a good one. Yeah. Man, I listening to you, I think I need to do that too. I need to do this some more. I'll tell you what, when I started kind of going through this experience, it was kind of forced on me. Because I had spent so much time building my physical self to be intimidating so that people wouldn't want to talk to me. When I started opening myself up, random and real weird situations started happening to me. This one time at my work, this like 80-year-old woman came up to me and bent over while I was sitting down, and I like looked up like, hello. And she said, she just looked down at me and just glossed over eyes. And then for probably 30-40 minutes, literally told me her whole life story, just going. And I'm sitting there like, do I stop? Like, do I just listen? Okay, I'm going to listen. Okay. And she just goes halfway through. She stops and looks at me and she goes, I don't know why I'm telling you all of this. And then she keeps going. And then when she stopped, something really interesting happened. She goes, what do you think I should do? Like, after telling me her life story with no real context about the question, she goes, what do you think I should do? And I had a moment where I was like, you're God, say something. And I was like, whoa, like, I don't know why I'm thinking this, but I had two opportunities. I could just say something random to get her to go away, or I could try to actually say something impactful and see what happens. And so I said, well, I think that you should smile and you should walk out the door and you should say hi to every person you meet today. And she looked at me and she goes, okay, that sounds great. I'm going to do that. And then smiled and walked out the building. So just totally bizarre. But I love this experience because that's exactly what people need. We need more connection. We need to be around each other. We learn from each other. Very good. Love that.
So my question back to you, sorry, Chris, I'm going to interrupt you because that's what I do all the time. But my question back to you is, how often, Cameron, have you taken that advice that you gave to her on the spur of the moment and incorporated it into your own life? Because that is what those interactions are all about. Sometimes the things that we offer to strangers like that hold such meaning in our head, you'll never forget that experience. But are you taking the lesson that was learned there and applying it as often as you can for your own growth?
That's really mind-blowing that you just said that. That's like absolutely bizarre because no, I had never thought of it like that. But I do try. But like literally you just saying that made me aware of that whole situation. And maybe it had nothing to do with her. Maybe it was all for me. That whole thing was just for me, a little gift from the universe. But no, I do try. I do. I I make an effort to do a few things every day. And, you know, I try to reflect and remember that being angry doesn't help me. I try to remember to be kind when it's needed, and really at all times, you know. And my wife and my stepson are great reminders of that. They're constantly testing my patience to see how calm and patient I can be, and they're my greatest teachers. Because if I can learn to be patient and calm with them in any moment, I can be calm and patient with any person I meet. And that goes in so many tunes with things that I need in my life because I want to love people unconditionally,
Yeah.
everyone.
That's the
You
point
know,
exactly, is that we are all an
so good.
amalgamation of our experiences, our parents, our friends, our spouses, everything that happens. We are that creation being molded. We are, as Alan Watts says, we are nature experiencing itself. And so if you're not engaging with other people in the world, you're not experiencing yourself. And that's when you die.
That's good. I love Alan Watts too. So brownie points for that. Christopher. Oh, I love the setting, by the way. Somehow I got a little dim in there.
Oh, that's just the light. I didn't have a light on in here. It was just natural light, like Diana was talking about. And now I've got my glow lamps everywhere. For me, it is two things that I think are transformational for people. Gratitude is huge. Wake up every day and say thank you. It's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be some profound understanding. Gratitude journals are great, and telling the people that you love them, that you're thankful for all the things that they do for you is awesome. But just waking up, the first thing you do is say thank you. Just say it out loud. I don't care if your spouse is next to you and they think that you're weird. Do it. It will change your life. You're setting yourself up for the entire day to say thank you for everything. You're embracing the gift that is the present, and that is you and your experience that you're about to have. The master level there is when you stub your toe, say thank you as well. When you get a flat tire, say thank you as well. Okay. When you get that jury summons, say thank you, right? Show the gratitude and watch what the universe does in return. It's actually quite incredible. If there was one hack for life, it's that. And two, breathe. Just take a moment and connect with your breath. That's all you really have to do to daily maintain a sense of peace and tranquility throughout the storms that happen for each and every one of us. And if you can master those two things, being able to take a step back whenever something shitty happens, take a deep breath and say thank you for the lesson that's going to be learned here, then you have mastered as much as Buddha. I'll just be quite plain.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure he would agree.
That is it. God, that's so good too. All three of you guys had wonderful answers to that. I love it. Um, and what's ironic to me is that the people who would listen to this and maybe scoff, ah, ah, is the same people who are also suffering just as we are in our own ways. But maybe they're suffering just a little bit more, and really they're jealous that we're not deeply in the suffering as they are. And what's also beautiful is that these things are not woo-woo. These things can be fact proven by science. That is what gets me. I have never necessarily needed to be a scientific guy for things to be understood. But when I started experiencing these things, almost every situation, weird thing that would happen to me when I opened my heart, I was like, well, this isn't woo-woo. Like, this can be proven with science, right? Like everything you three just said, sunlight coming in, boom, science. We know that sunlight is good for us, right?
Boom, science.
Joshua, interaction with people, we know from science, that's good for you. Christopher, what you're talking about, everything incorporated in that, being thankful and having a stance of gratitude. I'm sure there is some study out there that shows that that is beautiful and good for you and healthy. You don't even need science to prove that one. Just put it into practice.
That's why I love it.
Yes. I challenge anyone listening to this, if you haven't tried these practices, if you're not doing something daily to cultivate joy, love, and peace in yourself, take any one of these three, try it for just a week, and tell me if it's different. Tell me if it doesn't get you what you need, bring you a little bit of comfort and relief.
I think that's such a big piece of it. And this is probably backtracking a little bit, but you're talking a little bit about heaven being on earth, heaven being a state of mind, and we're talking about joy, love, and peace. Those things aren't outside of your grasp. In fact, those things are already inside of you. The only thing that's separating you from having those experiences in the moment with that single breath that you're taking is your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that's standing between you and joy, love, and peace. Heaven's already here. It's already inside of you. You just can't see it because your thoughts are putting up a veil. It's putting up a wall. It's causing this clouded experience inside of your head. But it's there.
Right. It's exactly like what Toth would say, Cameron. As above, so below. As within, so without.
That's right.
Once we understand that we are the microcosm, creating the macrocosm from within, then we can become true masters of our reality.
That's true. I mean, and it's like, when I started really kind of getting this information, this wisdom, I was a little overwhelmed by it. I was like, holy shit, what do I do with all this? Like, I started kind of freaking out a little bit. And then I just realized, like, it's okay. You know, because you wanted to know. And now you know. And there's nothing you have to do other than enjoy life and experience it for what it is. It's like this one, well, you guys will listen to it on the podcast up in the coming future because I've already done some. But I talk about this, is that the question all of us have asked at some point in our lives is, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Is there more to this? Do I really die and go somewhere? Do I come back again? What is the answer? More to anything else than we ever wanted to know in our lives. That has always been there. And anybody that says they haven't thought about it is lying. This is true for every soul because we know deep down there is an answer, and we're not satisfied with any external answer that we get from, a religion or from TV or from the government or whatever it is. We know there's more, and everyone does. They just need a little toking to get it up, to get it to come out of them. And again, right now, 2020, this is happening for a lot of people. They're starting to really be challenged in what they believe to be real.
I'm just going to go ahead and be like a firebrand and say it. Like 2020 is becoming one of my favorite years. I mean, a lot of good things have happened for me, but also I'm seeing some things change and people's eyes open. And so with all of the trauma, I'm just going to say thank you, 2020. I'm going to show a little bit of that gratitude to the hard times that many of us have experienced and say, thank you for the lessons learned. Thank you for all the blessings and abundance that will come forward. And I'm looking forward to seeing what all of this chaos has wrought.
Yeah, it's true. For me, it's been a true practice to, every day this year, I've had something crazy happen or something challenge me. And it was there is no better environment than right now for me to practice my patience and my compassion for other people. Because what is the world going to look like when we go back to normal, right? it'll be a lot easier to be nice to people. It'll be a lot easier to wave and smile and hug somebody and, want to be around them and communicate with them. But how much, better again is it that in the midst of chaos and our country is on fire and there's all kinds of things happening, that we're now being challenged with our reality. And for a lot of people who do not understand things the way that we understand them, it is challenging their very perception of reality. And this is good. This is key, and I think the phrase here to remember is that healing is painful. And that's exactly what we're experiencing right now. And I'm excited. Just as you said, 2020 started out real rough until I started to kind of figure out what was going on. But when it forced me to see things like you said, like saying thank you when you stub your toe. Not so much that I would say thank you for those situations, but when they would happen, I'd be like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. This is a situation. I get to choose how I respond to it. And I'm like, all right, it's okay. I'm not mad. I'm cool.
It's empowering, isn't it? I mean, and
Yeah.
that's the key is taking back what I always talk to people about is their personal power.
Yeah.
You have the control, and you're not, it's the ultimate way to destroy any attitude of victimhood that you may be suffering under. And yes, bad things happen, but you are the master of your reality, and you can choose how to act.
Probably
So
one
true.
of my favorite plus sides of spirituality in general is the lowering of the first, I guess, stress impact of frustrations, of troubles, of negative circumstances. Excuse me. It's that first initial reaction is no longer freak out about it. Once you get to a state of awareness in yourself and just of, the simple things around you, that there's more than what, we're seeing, and we start recognizing what conflict and obstacles really do for us, then we're no longer so upset when things go wrong or when things just aren't turning out the way that we want them to, because we recognize there's something else to it.
Yeah. You just wake up, like literally. I love that. That's why I love the term waking up, even though it's not like that. It's like, it's more of just like a knowing, probably a better way to put it. It's like a knowing. You're just like, oh, now I get it. It's like Joshua said earlier, you don't know until you know. And then when you know. And that was the same way for me. I noticed that when these things happen, it started off small, little situations happen. And then I just started being like, okay, I get it now. And then I guess it's hard for me to explain. Maybe you guys could do it better, but like the way that I see the world was fundamentally changed. And I stopped being so worried all the time. And I realized like, I don't have to do anything. Like there's not any grand thing I'm supposed to do. I can choose. And as long as I'm trying to be a good person and trying to improve myself, things will just continue to be the way they are. And anytime I experience suffering, there's a lesson to be learned.
Mm-hmm. And no, putting that in context, you can be listening to this podcast right now and hearing everything that we're saying and maybe comprehend it on some level, but not know it and not really understand it. And I imagine that all of us can look back at our lives and be like, man, anybody could have come to me and told me everything that we're saying now, and we would have thrown it right out the door, thrown out the baby with the bathwater type of thing, and not accepted it, didn't know it. And I've told people this before, even talking about like past life regression, be like, oh, tell me all my past lives. It's like, I can tell you everything in the world, but until you're ready to actually know it on your spiritual path, in your walk, whatever is already set up there for you, it won't matter. It won't change you. It won't help you become who you need to become. You'll know when you need to know.
Yes, God, that's good too. Yeah, that was one of the things that I kind of understood, is that I kept trying to force the knowledge, right? I kept trying to force enlightenment because I'm like, there's just something here that I need to understand. Like all these books I kept reading, these YouTube videos I kept watching. I can't even tell you how many times I read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. I'm too embarrassed to say it out loud, but it was just that thing. And then when I kind of backed off, right? When I kind of like took my foot off the pedal a little bit and was just like, all right, just breathe. Let's just meditate. Let's just hang out. I kind of took a little break from it. Bam. That's when it happened. When I took a break from it.
Not all that information can be found externally. And that's what you found out, is that you had to fight it internally. It's that meditative process that the change really happened.
Yeah. That's the true interchange. I mean, I've seen some crazy shit while meditating. I mean, that's pretty, if I had to like single out something that really kind of did it for me, was like I don't even want to get into it super long, but I had this experience where I was literally like meditating so deep. I was literally in samadhi, I was not in my body anymore. I was somewhere else. And I was talking to something in this palace floating in the sky. And I'm just like, but we're not talking with our mouths either, of course. It's telekinetic. And I don't know. It was one of those things like you don't know it up here, right? And I'm pointing to the head for those listening to the podcast. It's more about knowing it in here, in your heart. And I came out of that meditation, even though I didn't even hear that many things, like nothing was really said to me other than like, it's all going to be okay. Those literally the only words that were given to me was, it's all going to be okay. But it was the grand gesture of the whole thing and the experience itself. That changed me forever. When I saw something with my eyes closed, I'm like, this makes sense. I get it now.
And I have to preface this with, meditation is not as complicated as some people think it to be. Christopher does a really good job of explaining this and looking at meditation and how to do it. But that's usually my go-to answer for most things. People are like, oh, how do I become more mindful? Meditate. How do I become better at astral projection? Meditate. How do I do X? Meditate. How do I control my emotions? Meditate. How do I control my thoughts? Meditate. Like that's like the go-to thing. You want to improve anything on a spiritual basis, spend some time in self-reflection, rumination by yourself, and just be alone with your own thoughts. Right now, we spend so little time just being alone with our own thoughts without being distracted by pieces of the world. And we've been in, I almost cussed, we've been in quarantine for so long, and people still aren't comfortable with themselves in silence. They have to have the television playing, music playing. They have to have social media on there in front of their phones. They're still not comfortable being by themselves, and they're in quarantine. Yeah. Shut it off. Sit by yourself for 15 minutes, just with your own thoughts. Just look at them. Observe your thoughts.
That's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing for people is they can't. I talk about it to people all the time. I recommend it to everyone I meet. If they ask me, I'm now in a position where people do come to me and ask, how did I do what I do? And can you give me some insider tip or something like? And I say the same thing. Meditate. Close your eyes and sit still for a couple minutes and watch what happens. And that's one of the most beautiful things I love about meditation is that when I'm just still, so still that it almost feels like I'm not even moving, like I'm not even there, becoming nothing, kind of like what Ram Dass says, becoming nothing, and just the stillness and just like the weird energy you get throughout your whole body. And like, when I finally get into that mode where I'm just completely so still, like it feels like I literally can't, like I'm not moving, there's bliss in there. Like I don't have to do anything. I don't have to be anyone. And that's it. Just be here now.
Yep. Right. The joy and the peace is already in you. It's already there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the easiest way for people to understand this is you don't do meditation. Right?
Meditation does you. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's true. I mean, we're called human beings, not human doings. So just be yourself. Be that. And that's the problem, is that people are uncomfortable with who they are because they know the lie. They understand. We all know that the lie that we've been telling ourselves is the problem. It's the thing that's causing us the suffering. And we're afraid to realize our true power, to realize our true selves. And that's the process of meditation. It's just simply being. It's our natural state. And that's why it's uncomfortable, because we live in an unnatural state for the other X amount of minutes or hours for the rest of the day. And that's why it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. And what's amazing, and when you reach those states of bliss, is you realize who you truly are. And what is
the title of your first book, Christopher. Stop being a human doing.
Yeah. We're not human doings. We're human beings. That's Stop great. Being a human doing.
I'll definitely pre-order that one.
All right, I'll get to work on it tonight, guys.
Excellent.
I'll be done tomorrow.
This is going to be one sentence.
It's going to be 2 pages.
$14.99 at the LifeGrove store. Yeah.
Oh, maybe. Okay. Let's talk about a few things here. I want to start wrapping things up. But Joshua, what are some things coming from LifeGrove? For people listening to this that may not have actually gone to the website and gone to like see us and what we're doing over there, what are some things coming up that we've got planned? What do we got in store for our guests?
So let's talk a little bit about what LifeGrove has first. So LifeGrove is kind of a three-tier piece in terms of how our business is put together. We have our hub website, lifegrove.org, and that's where you can connect with articles, connect with our practitioners that offer a variety of different services, including tarot readings, astrological readings, distant Reiki healing, all sorts of different pieces that are offered there. So our practitioners are connected with them through our lifegrove.org, and you can get services through them. Then we have LifeGrove Academy. Then we have LifeGrove Academy, which is where all of our courses and master classes are set up. And we're also started, airplanes flying overhead. Then we also have some regular workshops that we're offering through there as well. And we'll have more of those coming, but that's where you can connect with all the information that's kind of there. And most of them are work at your own pace. So like I said, there's a lot of free ones. Most of them are fairly cheap. I mean, it's going to cost you less than what would go buy that fast food meal. So you can go and pick those up, work through them at your own pace, and you can connect with instructors, send emails, and get more feedback on that. And then lastly, we have grovesocial.org, which is like Facebook, except for it's a more sacred social place. What do you call it, Christopher?
Sacred media.
That's amazing.
Yeah, sacred media. There you go. And that is where you can just vent and talk and ask questions and share knowledge. We also have circles on there, which are like Facebook groups. Many of them are free. Some of them will have a small, like one-time or monthly charge to them, where you can get exclusive content to, share information about books that are being read, or to dive into theory or philosophy, or you can look at more stuff that has to do with the woo-woo stuff. There's everything that's offered there as well. So that's kind of how we have things set up. But in terms of what is coming, it is really seeing our practitioners stepping up and becoming the face of LifeGrove. They are going to be there offering information, articles, being available, connecting with them through services, through workshops, and really being there to help support our community as best as we can. So if people are practitioners, they want to be a part of that, the door is open, application process is easy, and connecting with us, we want to offer as much eclectic information as we can so that people can connect in that way. And we're also looking at, I don't know if we want to mention this, but we're also looking at doing a big event for the winter solstice, where we will be doing an online community event for people to kind of partake in all of these things, a buffet style thing, if you will, where they can build their own knowledge and start their spiritual journey. Now, there's a lot of cool stuff in the 3 to 5 year plan that's down the road, but we don't need to jump into that yet.
Yes, not yet. We have time. But I'm really excited about the festival thing. I'm glad you brought that up, because we are going to get crazy, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Things are going to get weird. Christopher, I'm looking at you.
Well, I mean, we don't have to tell them about how I'm going to dance naked with an accordion or anything like that.
I don't know what ritual that is, but I want to see it. Okay. So yeah,
got my heart chakra opening up just thinking about it.
Oh, yes.
Bless your Kundalini.
Bless my Kundalini.
Waiting for that.
Oh man, that's good. That's good stuff, everybody. Okay, guys, this is the first episode, and we're gonna wrap this up. Guys, thank you for joining me, and we're gonna have you on in the future. So just sit tight. Let me do some magic, and we'll have this ready to go. But thank you guys again for creating this beautiful thing, and for allowing people to be open with you guys, and for creating a space where people can come and feel what they need to feel and to learn about what they need to learn about, and for allowing me to host this podcast and hopefully bring our voice out to these people and help them heal in the way that they need to heal.
Thank you as well, Cameron.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron.